Your Minecraft world lacks detail, and so does mine. So starting from today, I decided that I'm gonna improve the world one day at a time, one build every day. And by build, I don't necessarily mean a huge build. I mean just a small improvement that adds a bit more detail to the world. So it could be a lamppost, it could be a detail on a path, could be a small cart near a path. Anything like that that adds a bit more detail to the world and not have everything look really bland as normal terrain generation looks like. And for day one, I decided that I'm going to be doing something that I wanted to do for a while, and that is actually make a path over to my mob farm. Because right now this path goes over to my other builds, but there's no actual connection to my mob farm. So I'm just gonna branch out from this main path, go over there and build something similar. So I drew the path over here, which is a basic shape of it that's going to be. I then spreaded the moss so it matches the same aesthetic as the original one. And I added some light source underneath carpets just like this to prevent any mobs spawning around and actually clear the clutter of torches. The next step was to put down some spruce fences. This breaks up the color a bit and adds a bit more contrast. And clean up some of these azaleas because some of them are way too often. And the last part of the build was to add a bit of color and some mood in the paths. So for the color I used some sweetberry bushes to get a bit of red in here, and then I used these blue orchids to kind of heighten the contrast and follow the same kind of rule that I followed over there. I wanted to keep the path similar. And then I just added these wood slabs over here just between the path. Kind of makes a different noise when you walk past, and it adds a bit extra to the path. For day 2, we are gonna keep things very simple. It's something that I wanted to add for a very long time now, and I feel like it's finally the time to do it. I don't know how I feel with the back of the barrel, so I think I'm gonna be doing it this way. I decided that I want to have this on all the villages on all sides basically. So this has an entrance over here and one over on that side. So there's going to be a post box on either side. And I actually like how it looks like. I feel like it fits better over on this side than it fits on that one because I don't really have the space. But it's very simple. Maybe I'll add a button over here, maybe to like kind of add a bit more depth to it. But as a general idea, I feel like it works. I added one over here at the Mason village. I added it here just because I knew mobs are going to be able to jump over it if I add it too close, and this golem pretty much proves this because he is trying to jump over the fence. And to finish things off, I'm going to add one over here at the starter house because I feel like it really fits the vibe as well, and why not have a post box over here. For day 3, I want to add some small rock piles around the Mason village. I'm gonna add one right near this path over here, so like that it adds a bit more detail right next to it. Probably going to add one somewhere over on that area, and then maybe some on the other side maybe. So I was thinking to do something very small, nothing too huge, nothing too big or anything like that. Maybe I'm gonna do one of the stairs here and one of those like that. And then maybe add a carpet over here. Something like this. That's a very tiny small rock. Then over here we have a bit of a bigger one. I use some of the mini blocks. I completely forgot that I have those, so they add a bit more depth to it because they're not actually a full block on either side. And then I added this very tiny one right near the entrance of the village, and I added a bit of a bigger one over to the side over here. And I feel like it adds a good bit of detail even though they're very small things that were added to the village. And I'm definitely gonna have to do some kind of terraforming around here, but as a start, this is a very good thing to have. For day number 4, we are going to be adding some tree stumps around here. For anyone that's been watching this for a while now, you might have known that I have planted some trees over here that were spruce. So technically we took down the forest, so I want to kind of highlight that with adding a few spruce tree stumps basically. And this is how it looks like now. I feel like it adds a bit more. I added some grass over here. You can't really bone meal the pods all, but I just sheared some of the grass around here. Added in next to these. Then I added some stripped logs, some stripped oak, just because it kind of, sits in the sun, so it dried out on the top. Then I added a few slabs over here, a fence post. So now the whole area looks a bit better when you look from the outside or when walking from the path, because it would just look like a normal podzol hill or whatever. So now I feel like it adds a bit more to the world, which is exactly what I had in mind. I feel like I could probably add one more over here. Yep. Definitely fills the area just a tiny bit more. It's just a log with a slab on top, but it adds a lot. On day 5, we are going to add the water pump. Even though we have a well inside, you never know when that dries out. So we are going to be adding a small water pump over here that basically is able to bring water from the ocean or from rivers and all that. And, you know, it gets purified over time. Over here, they have a pretty much underground station that the villagers are using to pretty much make it drinkable and usable for crops, obviously. And here it is. It's a very simple design, nothing too special. Everything goes into a pot. I added a small path over here that the villagers are kind of using every now and again whenever they need it. And that's it, like another small addition to the world that makes it feel just a bit fuller. For day 6, we added a small boat over here. It's a really tiny boat that transports resources from over at the starter area to the village, to through the bridge to the next village that we're gonna be building. Has a small lantern over here just to see in the dark, and it looks so cool to actually see the reflection in the water as well with the shaders. For day 7, I want to add something next to this path because it feels really bland just seeing the bridge behind, so I think I'm gonna be building it somewhere just around here. And to walk back up, it definitely looks much better. You can just see plain grass and sand. There's actually something here. And I want this to be something similar of like a small campsite that people were traveling through here. And they just kind of left their things behind. The fire's still working because it was fairly recent. There's some extra firewood over there if they needed it. So yeah, they just took a break, and I feel like it actually breaks apart the landscape a bit, and it makes it look a bit better with this here. On day number 8, we are going to add yet another thing over at the farmer village, and it's gonna be in this spot over here because I feel like it's fitting to have it between the farms and the actual village. And it's going to be a kind of compost station where they just come in and throw all their like leftover carrots or whatever it is. Anything that kind of is about to spoil, they just throw it in here because I'm sure they have a big surplus of wheat and carrots over here. And it looks something like this. Some composters over here that are kind of getting full. Some shrooms are starting to grow because no one is really looking after it. They just keep throwing things away and it just stays here. I wish I could add some kind of particle for the smell, but I don't think that's possible. That would add a bit of life to it. Also, this iron golem keeps trampling over it. So yeah, that's a small little addition that kind of ties the area together, and I most definitely need to remove this beacon. For day 9, we are back next to the Mason village, and we are going to be adding a small cart over here. Which said cart is currently waiting over here, loaded up with all the resources that the Masons are making, and it's waiting to be delivered to other villagers that need this. Since we reached day 10, we are gonna do something that will help us navigate through the world, and this is going to be some signs. So we're gonna be doing something simple over here. I'm gonna keep it simple for now. So if we go there, we're gonna go to villages. And if we go this way, we are going to go to the mountain. We have another crossroads over here. This one goes to the mob farm, and this one goes to the villages again. And since I only have one more crossroads over here, this one goes to the Mason village, and this one goes to the end just across the bridge here. For day 11, we are gonna fill this area over here, even though there's currently a horse filling it for us. And it's actually fitting because we are going to be building a small cart once again. But this time is a fallen down cart. It was one of the carts that came over from the Mason village, but it kind of tipped over here. Some of the stones spilled, they kind of got eroded over time. There's some moss growing over it, and I feel like it fills the space really nice and is not just an empty background with the forest now. For build number 12, we are getting back near the Mason village, And I was thinking that since these masons need something to help them process all this stone over here, I'm gonna build a small windmill. You're gonna have to use your imagination a bit to think that this is connected to the village over here and they are just harnessing the power of the wind to process all the stone that they managed to gather from this kind of underground of the hill. For build number 13, I want to add one more thing over to the mason village over here, and that is a message board. And when I said message board, I meant a bit more like an order board. So we have a couple of signs here, what the villagers need to produce for the other villagers. There's a bit of a path here where they walk just to read the orders and then they just go back straight to work. For day number 14, we are going to keep it really simple. And we are going to make a trough for horses. It's now filled with water, and this is supposed to be used by all the travelers coming in with horses, so horses can have a bit of water after the long travels. And I added a similar one at the entrance of the Mason village just to keep it consistent because people do travel both ways. For day number 15, we are coming back to the sniffer enclosure and try to pretty it up a bit because since we built this nice willow tree, we haven't really added anything around here, and with the new shelves being added, I think I have a few ideas, especially that there's so many of these online right now. And by these, I mean these kind of flower pot designs. I feel like they're really nice and you can play a lot with what you put in the shelves. And I also learned that one slot of the shelf actually takes your whole stack. I right clicked on it and I didn't know why exactly did I lose everything. But yeah, that's a bit of a pain that you kind of have to put everything one by one. But I guess in a way it's kind of a good thing that you can make some kind of automation. I'll definitely have to play with this. So I added the pitcher plant over here, some azalea, some rose bushes. I added some redstone to kind of match the aesthetic of each of the pots. And then over here I added an eye blossom, which should open up during the nighttime if I'm not mistaken. I actually got this from a wandering trader. I still haven't seen a pale garden in this world, so I'm definitely gonna have to look for one of those too. Day 16, we are gonna be adding a small log pile over here right next to the starter house. We are pretty much surrounded by a forest, so I want to assume that I'm taking all the wood from there and then piling up here next to the starter house where I'm gonna be using it whenever I need it. It's just a basic log pile, all of it made out of oak because that's what we mostly have around here. I guess I could have used some birch, but I'm not the biggest fan of birch if it's like that, so I would have to strip it. I added some extinguished campfires over here to look like I'm actually using the wood, grabbing a bit out of it, and then there's still a few logs remaining over here. They're being held down by the rails over here. I added some buttons because wood always has some kind of imperfections, and then a small lantern over here that I use whenever I come at night and I can't see anything, and some pressure plates just for a bit of depth. So now when we leave the starter house, we don't have to just stare at this hill. This actually breaks up the whole area a bit and it makes it look a bit nicer. For day 17, we are going to add a bit more aesthetic around these altars that we have around the world that basically hold our lightning rods. And by aesthetic, don't think that it's anything too big or too special, but compared to everything being bare and empty, this actually looks pretty good. I wanted originally to add all the flowers, but I feel like it didn't look as nice because it's the same kind of height on the flowers. So I decided to just bone meal everything. So now there's a bit of variation with the tall grass, with the small grass. There's a few flowers in between. You can kind of see a bit of color in between the grass. So I think I'm gonna kind of tear these down a bit and add a bit more grass just to have that variation. And it also looks like it's pretty much the altar has been built, it's doing its job, and no one really is looking after it. It's kind of overgrown now. But I feel like it definitely looks much better than having the plain grass blocks, and it kind of obstructs the view of the village a bit as well. So you kind of have to walk around a bit until you properly see the village over in the distance. For day 18, I decided to improve one of my paths. This was previously done, but I added a few more details over here. I added some bamboo, some sweet berries, some of these azaleas, some fences. It kind of goes nicely through the trees over here, so it's not just a plain old path. And then it kind of goes into this area that was already done and is a bit more colorful, that basically takes us all the way to the mountain and to the willow tree. For day 19, I'm showing something that I have already built. It's a small campsite into the side of the mountain over here that has just a small campfire over here, a bed, a few barrels that have a few items that the travelers left behind over here in the campsite. This just makes it feel a bit more finished and not just an empty hole into the mountain. For day 20, we are moving again to another path that I've done previously. And I feel like this is one of the nicer paths that I've made, just purely because it has so much greenery. I added these lanterns over here to have some lighting around. There's a bit of color with these flowers, the bushes, and it just looks so good overall. And I feel like the thing that adds the most to a path is to not make it straight and to make it curvy, so you can always see a bit more whenever you get around the corner. You can see over here, if I go in a straight line, it doesn't look as good because this is just kind of straight. But the second it starts curving, it adds a bit more detail to it. Day 21 is a bit more of a long-term project, and I have this in my world, and that is connecting everything that you've built with a path. You can see over here that every single build that I have currently, it's connected by a walking path. And I feel like this, even though if you don't use all the paths all the time and you just fly over them, it adds so much more continuity to your builds, because everything is walkable in case you ever have to, or you just want to showcase your world, or maybe you just want to invite someone over to show your world. Day 22, it's a bit of a repeat, but I made a cart over here next to the path that is going from the farmer village or the farmer area over to other areas that require all those resources. We reached day 23, and for this I want to do a bit of terraforming around these beaches over here and maybe even that one over there, because these can be seen both from the bridge and from the village, and I feel like if I tidy up this sand a bit and remove the holes, try to make it a bit more uniform, it would look so much better than it does right now. I'm definitely not the best terraformer in the world, but I feel like just adding these slabs adds so much already to this beach. When you look at this, how sharp these edges are, it looks just out of place when you think of a regular beach, but adding these slabs adds a bit of a better transition. I know I could probably do a much better job, and I'll probably do it further down the line, but I feel like for the time being, just to have a bit of an improvement of this area, it's kind of a job well done. And also for some added color, I added some azalea bushes over here, some sugar cane around the edges, and I want to add some cacti that's gonna grow the flowers and spread them kind of sporadically around the beach, just to break up this whole flat land that we have over here. For day number 24, I added a very subtle detail, and it's just some kind of lanterns flying above the bridge. They've been taken by the current, flying out into the ocean. It's a small addition, but it makes the bridge feel a bit less empty. Also, I feel like these would be a nice addition in any world, especially if you make them somewhere high up in the sky, just to have something to look at instead of just the clouds. Day number 25 brings a bit more improvement to our river over here. I added some of these cattails. I know they're usually made with candles, but I don't have any currently, so I will have to definitely make a bee farm. So I just use some spruce fences. And they actually look slightly better with the shaders off because the glass is a bit more visible. I wanted to use bamboo at first because I feel like that would look so much better, but unfortunately you cannot place that underwater. I added some around here. I added some over on that side, and I added some over here right next to the path to the starter house. For day 26, I added a few stepping stones over here from the mob farm over to the willow and the mountain over here. I wanted to be consistent with having everything linked with a path, and I feel like this is a really nice addition, and I am most definitely going to use this in all the other builds whenever I can. And I want to add that these feel perfect because I don't need to sprint. I can walk over a lot of them without having to jump at all. So I feel like it's a really nice addition. With the shaders, they look even better. And the sun should be coming down any second now to see exactly how it looks like at night. I have also added a bit of glow lichen around. There's some here, some to the sides. It's really nice that you can waterlog this because you can actually add it on the side of the blocks into the water. So I feel like this should look really nice once the night comes down. And here it is from this side. It looks really nice and bright. The lanterns add the bit of color that we needed over here. And then the lichen actually makes the steps light up just a tiny bit more to make the path even more visible. And if we walk over to the other side, we can see how it looks like from here with a bit of a more darker background. So like I said, I am most definitely going to use this thing further down in all of my builds going forward. For day 27, we are coming back over here where we've already added a lot of details. But I wanted to add one more because the more you have customs, the better your world would look like. And I added some kind of a fallen tree. It looks like it's been fallen down for a while. Some moss is starting to grow here. The dirt is getting a bit muddy because of all the leaves decaying. I saw a really cool trick where you can add a button on top of this log, so it looks like there's like still a splinter left from how the tree collapsed. I added some azalea bushes over here, some azalea leaves to look a bit like they're drying off because it's been collapsed for so long. And I feel like it's a really cool addition, adding a bit of color over here, a bit of variation, except just this regular forest, which by the way I am planning to kind of change at one point because I want to make as many custom trees as I can, because I'm definitely bad at it. So the more I can make, probably the better this will look. Day 28, I am coming back to an area that I kind of neglected and I never actually did anything with. So I decided to add a bit of a collapsed house over here. This was just some empty plains over here. So adding this small house over here being collapsed, it looks like it's been taken over by the terrain, which kind of makes it justice that I'm not really touching this area much. And it kind of adds also a bit of texture, a bit of color. We don't see all that sand that's in the back there. And I feel like it's a really cool addition that you could probably add throughout your worlds. Wherever it's like a bit of an empty, if you have a village nearby or houses nearby, you can say that this was an old settlement and it just kind of ties in the world together once again. Getting to day 29, I decided to add a very tiny water well over here, just to add even more detail around the area. Has a bit of water in here, this kind of small bucket if we look at it, to grab the water from the well, and then we can put it into this spot over here for whenever we need it. I also added some buttons over here just to kind of simulate that we're walking and, you know, there's like stones around here. I added some grass, add a small flower just because water spills and flowers are growing around it, a lantern for some light, and I feel like it looks pretty cool. And for day 30, we made it to the final day. I decided to add a bit more light to the lake that we have over here by adding these lanterns around all these drip leaf that I have around the lake basically. Most of them are around the edges, and I decided to wait for nighttime to see this the best, and I feel like it really adds a lot. Going into camera mode, the lake really does feel really nice with the lights, and it actually looks really good without shaders too. You can see those patches of light coming around wherever we have the lanterns, and you can also see the drip leaf with that bright green. So all in all, I am really happy with how this turned out. And these were my 30 days of building 30 different things. Even though we repeated some of them, I feel like we managed to improve the world by a lot. I decided to be right next to the stepping stones because I feel like this is the build that I love the most so far out of all these 30 builds that we've done. I think I'm definitely going going to start to add a few more details around the world as I build more things, because this video actually made me really inspired. It made me do some research, see what would fit in my world, how exactly would I be able to improve it, and it looks like adding small little touches throughout your world really makes it come alive. So I hope I inspired you as well to add a few details and make your world look much better and more connected. As always, thank you for watching. I do appreciate all your support. If you enjoyed this video, do leave a like and share your thoughts below, and if you're new here, consider subscribing. Until next time, happy crafting!